This is a general biology course that I created for my students during the pandemic. Due to the high incidence of COVID in the state, we felt it best to go online for the semester. I wanted to make sure that my students had the same level of interaction and quality of instruction that they would have in a face-to-face course. This course is easily transferable to any LMS, and when I designed this course for Blackboard, I kept in mind that if we changed LMSs, then it would need to be able to adapt to a different platform. When I design a course, I always start with an appropriate book. I've used books from major publishing houses, but find that it is more cost-effective and more useful to use an OER. The ability of the student to retain access to the book even after the semester is over, and the fact that it is free, both factored into my decision to use OpenStax Biology 2nd edition. The book has an app, an online version, and if students are more comfortable, a print version, making it versatile and accessible. After an appropriate book is chosen, I move on to my objectives. If you don't have an end goal of what you want your students to learn by the end of the course, then you won't know what type of assignments and assessments will best support that learning. When I choose objectives, I want to make sure that they are easy to understand and free from heavy jargon. Students may not be familiar with the language of biology, and making sure that those objectives are clear is vitally important. I also don't want to overwhelm my students with too many objectives. I choose 2 to 3 per chapter that best highlight the information in the chapter, knowing that I can always expand on any information that is in the book. Due to the 16-week structure utilized by most colleges, I only include certain chapters from the book, but make sure that the student has information from the smallest level of organization to the highest level of organization, making their knowledge of biology well-rounded. The book is the best place to find the objectives so that you can make sure that your assignments are supported by the resource. This is an example of how I would present the objectives to the students in a weekly format. Chapter 1 is an overview of biology, and I want my students to be able to list and describe the characteristics of life and demonstrate the use of the scientific method. As you can see, there is nothing overly technical in that set of objectives, which makes it easier for students to understand. After the objectives have been set, it's necessary to put them in the syllabus. The syllabus is a binding contract between yourself and the student, and as such, it's necessary to make sure that they understand what is expected from them and for them to learn by the end of the course. The syllabus should be clear and concise. If your school has a syllabus template, then you should use it. Quality Matters rubrics emphasize consistency across syllabi so that no matter what course a student is taking, they will always know where to look in the syllabus to find certain information, like office hours. Besides the basic syllabus, I also include documents that make clear my expectations for the students and insert my own personality. For example, the semester survival guide includes both of these aspects and helps my students build rapport with me. A schedule is also included, both in the syllabus and as its own document. Understanding due dates and being able to plan out the semester was important to me as a student, and it helps my students to be more organized. Another way I help my students be more visually attuned to the schedule is to color code it. Even if it's a simple gray and white structure, the delineation helps to visually separate each week and avoid confusion. Now that we have created our syllabus and put all of that hard work in, we need to create the Start Here module that highlights the most important parts of said syllabus, because we all know that the students aren't going to read it. I also include an action item, such as the syllabus quiz, to ensure that they do complete the Starting Here module. Again, you've put a great deal of work into this, and the information is important, and often students need an incentive to go through this module. This is the table of contents for the Start Here module. It has a section to help students understand how to navigate the course. This includes where to find links to synchronous meetings and the gradebook. The next section is about reading materials and course assignments. I include information about how to navigate the folders within the module and how many assignments they can expect per week. The learning objectives are also included here so that students understand what they should know by the end of the course. A link directly to the book and a picture of the cover is included. I like to put the ISBN number if it's not an OER, so students can find the book on sites like Amazon and Abe Books. The syllabus is here too. It may seem redundant, but the more places the student can find it, the less excuses they have for not reading it. Again, at the end, I put an action item, the syllabus quiz, so that students will complete this module. This course had both synchronous and asynchronous aspects. I wanted to make sure that students had easy access to the Zoom meeting links so they could join in the synchronous portions. Each week is set up as a module with different pieces that lead to a multifaceted understanding of the subject. In the Zoom meeting link, I include a link to the class portion of the synchronous learning environment. I also held online office hours and include a link to this as well. Finally, I include the rules so that there is accountability and students understand the expectations of the synchronous part of this course. The modules contain both synchronous and asynchronous portions. The book is used to plan each of these modules out. The way this book is set up allows for you to teach from the smallest level of organization to the most complex, scaffolding the information from the previous chapter. Consistency is key. I put my modules in a weekly format, and the description includes information about the chapters that will be covered, what the due dates are, and the objectives for that week. Each module contains certain parts that are shown to increase retention and provide activities that lead to a deeper understanding of the topic. It includes notes and chapter resources, ed puzzles and out-of-class assignments, in-class activities, videos and other resources, and the lab component. The first part of the module is the notes and chapter resources. I make sure to include the PowerPoint notes that are provided by the OER. They are more comprehensive than the Nearpod that we use during the synchronous element of this course. I also include a Quizlet. I encourage students to build their own or to add to the existing Quizlet. This is a helpful tool to provide students an online flashcard for rote knowledge and to test their retention of said knowledge. Finally, there is a link to the Nearpod so that students can easily access it. A Nearpod is part of the first synchronous element. It is a mini lecture, no longer than 15 minutes, that allows me to test for understanding while I am lecturing. I start out with a meme or some other form of humor to break the ice and build rapport with my students. I record all the Nearpod sessions for better accessibility. Sometimes students aren't able to make it to the synchronous meeting, and I want to make sure that they hear the analogies and anecdotes that make the content relatable. The next section of the module, I include asynchronous learning opportunities to help solidify student understanding. I always include an ed puzzle, but remind students that there might be some other small activity or game that is necessary for them to complete. The next synchronous element of the course is the in-class activities. There will be a pre-activity, an activity, and a post-activity for students to complete. If the case study that I'm using doesn't have those elements, I can always build them in later. The scientific method activity included in week 1 does not have a pre-activity, but there was a different activity that primed their knowledge to be successful at that activity. I want the students to complete the pre-activity before attending the Zoom. If they miss the Zoom, they can work on the activity independently. The post-activity is a way for me to check comprehension and confirm that they understand the concepts presented in the case study and that they didn't just copy down another person's answers. I utilize this specific format because it allows each student to be the facilitator and elicit responses from their classmates using the Socratic method. It also increases critical thinking by making them explain their reasoning. They can put a 2-word answer to the initial question, but by making them explain their reasoning, it can increase their retention. The first time we do a case study in this format, I make sure that I'm the facilitator, and we do it as an entire class so I can help them understand what the process should look like. Another aspect of the module is the videos and other resources portion. One video or one lecture may not be enough for a student to fully comprehend the material. I provide alternative videos from other creators to help solidify that learning link for the student. Additional PowerPoints from books that I have used in the past and alternative Quizlets give students the opportunity to have more resources to study. The final aspect of the module is the lab. Online labs lose some of the excitement of face-to-face labs. However, they expand accessibility, especially for those that can't come to class, whether it's a health issue or due to some other outside activity. I include an online lab quiz to make sure to consolidate the information that they learned in the lab. I've used McGraw-Hill in the past, and they have an excellent program, but to keep the cost down for the students, I utilize sites like Bioman, PhET Simulations, and Merlot.org to find free alternatives. Another form of asynchronous learning is the discussion board. It's a way for students to interact with the text weekly, but not have to read an entire chapter before class. I assign each student a section, and then they either format the information into notes for a jigsaw or they create a one-pager. I stress that the jigsaw notes should be written in their own words for better retention. Often schools don't teach students how to take notes, so I show them the method that I utilize, Cornell Notes. This system is backed by research and has an easy-to-follow template. Students upload their notes on the discussion board to be utilized by the other students to help complete their notes of the chapter. A one-pager is another form of asynchronous learning that provides an outlet for creativity. While not every student is an excellent artist, I have them include a visual element to make connections to the written material. The students put their one-pagers up on the discussion board to provide others a chance to download and print them off to use for their exams. Both of these methods are excellent ways to encourage collaboration and peer-to-peer education. After the modules are complete, my exams are delivered using a proctoring system. Even though I use Open Book, Open Note, it's important that they don't use Open Student. I don't want to know what student B knows on student A's test. I want to know if the student can take the knowledge from one objective and combine it with the knowledge of another objective to apply to a new situation. Open Book, Open Note tests can be controversial, but I find that they are more representative of real-world situations. Whether you're a dishwasher or a doctor, you always have access to resources in your day-to-day operations. We need to teach students how to use those resources effectively. By providing my students with a low-stakes opportunity to test the skills that I teach them, they become less reliant on the book and more confident in their own abilities. I provide students with a link that demonstrates how to study for an open book test and how to organize their materials to best utilize them during a timed test. My exams also encourage critical thinking. I don't include many questions about rote knowledge. I do have them to provide students the ability to succeed and gain confidence before moving on to the more challenging short answer questions. The short answer questions require students to utilize their knowledge to apply it to a new situation. In this example, students need to know what the characteristics of life are and how the scientific method works, to provide an example of an experiment that they would set up to test for those characteristics. An example of a good student answer would be explaining the idea of growth and development and describing the observation of the organism over time to detect that characteristic. I make clear to my students that one example is not enough for questions like this and encourage them to think of at least 3 so that they can receive full credit. The previous description of the structure is the one that was most beneficial to my students, and I know this because I utilize student feedback to continuously improve my courses. For this particular course, I had a 96% approval rating based on the Likert scale evaluation that showed that 25 out of 26 students strongly agreed that they would recommend this course to others, and that they were active participants that gained more knowledge on the subject. They found the course to be engaging, informative, and entertaining. No matter what format you present this course in, it's important to build rapport and let your students know that you can be accessible for questions they may have. This course can be adapted to be fully face-to-face with the inclusion of hands-on labs, or completely asynchronous by eliminating the collaboration on the in-class activities and relabeling it critical thinking activities. I look forward to hearing back from you, and if you need any other information, please contact me.